So it is time to talk about Rush. Probably the most popular game style I've seen in Total War Warhammer. I see the most number of players doing Rush things. Building for Rush. I, for one thing, think if you have range tools, you should take some of them. And that is because I did mention it in the Beastmen army guide. I think if you hard rush and someone boxes, like does a degenerate Nurgle box or something, a couple Ungor Raiders in this example, or I don't know, what else do we have? Ogre Kingdoms. If they're rushing, you could take a couple Noblar Trappers or a Maneater with pistols or one Leadbelcher or something. It's because if you run into that one box build or something like that, your archers will get like 4 or 5 times their value and probably win you the game. So it's relatively cheap to usually take 1 or 2 ranged units just in case to support the rush. In general, if you're rushing, you want a lot of the same the asset pieces. You want a Lore of Magic that supports your rush, either with buffs for you, leadership debuffs for your enemy are pretty huge. Stat debuffs for your enemy are okay, but not usually great for a rush. Not usually. AoE damage spells that inflict a lot of damage quickly to rout off units is good. Usually want at least 1 or 2 sources of terror in any rush. Something like a Jabberscythe or a Gorgon, or I don't think Torox causes terror. He just causes fear. Yeah. You want something with terror that can help you bust through the front line even quicker. If you get something leadership low enough, it'll at least move out of your way briefly. Chariots are also quite crucial to most rush factions. Their just ability to path through infantry and muck up any cavalry targets is very important. Chariots, in most cases, don't deal a ton of damage. It's just about constantly charging them through the enemy ranged units and not allowing them to act. So you only need like 1 or 2. If you go 3 or 4 or 5 or something, which is banned by fruit rules, but let's just say you're doing quick battle. If you have too many chariots, it's just not going to do anything. Like, yay, we're disrupting them. Look at how much we're disrupting them, guys. We're disrupting so many things. And then you realize that nothing kills anything, and eventually you just lose. Because almost all chariots are extremely fragile when they get stopped in melee combat for any reason. Infantry in a rush need to serve a purpose. Generally, you don't want too much chaff in a rush. Usually not, because the agency is on you to crush through the enemy front line. So if you have chaff just getting in your way, usually it's going to slow down your rush. Now, you might want some chaff in cases like dwarves, who I'm currently just sitting against, is miners with blasting charges. You could throw your chaff at them, let them take the hit. You know they're just going to die instantly and get out of your way if you're real infantry. But in some cases, it's like if you have Norsca and you have Marauders and Marauder Champions, and both of them are going to get stuck on each other, it can be a little tough. So you don't just want chaff for chaff's sake. Almost all the infantry you take needs to be able to deal damage. Like if you're rushing with a spear variant that has higher melee defense than its axe variant, then why are you taking the spear variant? You almost always want a cavalry or mobile advantage if you're going to rush someone. If you're rushing without a cavalry or mobile advantage, that usually means in the late game that they will just run away from you and cycle charge you or kite you or anything like that. So if you're going to rush, you do need to dominate the flanks and make sure your opponent can't slip away, especially if they're trying to kite you. This can mean pairing up cheap units like dogs with poison with more hard-hitting units like heavy cavalry. And if anybody stops to fight your dogs, the heavy cavalry will slam into them. And if they don't stop to fight your dogs, the dogs get free value chasing them and nipping at their heels. Flying units are a little tricky. Only take flying units in a rush if you have something for the flying units to target. If you're expecting an all-melee faction, flying units don't usually get that much value unless they have a range attack of their own. But they can be useful for flying straight over a front line and diving in on the enemy. Monstrous infantry are similar to chariots, but they actually kill stuff. So as chariots just need to muck up the backline over and over again, cycle charging. Monstrous infantry can normally be thrown at something, path through infantry, surround it, and kill it. Those are generally what things are for. When you're rushing, one thing to always remember is you need to have some sort of single entity killing. I see a lot of rush builds, like let's take a Beastman rush build, for example. Caster Lord, let's just say Malagor for fun. And then we have, oh man, I got some Ungors. Oh man, that's pretty cool. Alright, I got some archers. Alright, I got some Centigors. Alright, I got some dogs. I got some harpies. I got some pigs. I got some more Centigores. This is a sick build. I'm really fast. I'm going to run at them. Okay. But who kills Thoric? Like on his anvil? Nobody. So always remember that you need at least something to kill a single entity. Whether in the Beastman case it's like throwing axes, so some strong armor-piercing skirmish cav of some kind that can follow your rush and really hit the big single entities. Or monsters infantry are usually quite good at surrounding a single entity and taking it down. Or armor-piercing cav or something like that. Just always remember, no matter what faction you're facing, you're going to have to take down a lord at some point. Okay? Setting up a rush. Similar to what we said in the kite video that's either coming out after this or is already out. You might be like, why wouldn't you want a Vanguard and a rush, human boy? Stop hating on my Vanguard. Only Vanguard if everything can Vanguard, or like, in this case, if I don't have the best Agores. Like, this is fine, because your Minotaurs are going to be so much faster than your Ungors that they'll catch up, and it'll be fine. If everything you're leaving behind that isn't Vanguard is fast as heck, it'll catch up to it, and it'll be fine. If it isn't, you do have to learn a little bit of rough eye math on timing. So let's say I want these Ungor herds to hit first. I want them to hit the front line first. And there's going to be miners with blasting charges or some shit there. These guys have the same speed. So deployment like this is fine. They're going to match each other's speed. When they move forward, both of them will hit like this. So the Ungor Spearman herds will hit the Dowie front line, and you can see the best scores are right behind. And they'll come up after. Safe from the blasting charges. Hooray. What if you have this? Minotaurs. Speed 62 compared to the 36 of the Ungor herds. Minotaurs, you probably want to deploy them decently far back, and you got to kind of eyeball it on when they'll actually hit the front line. Because you want them to arrive, you want them to end up here compared to your front line. So you start them back here, give them some time to run up, and if you need to, you can stop them before they get in range of the enemy. Okay, so that's front line deployment. Remember all the relative speeds of stuff and check that depending on where you want them to end up when they hit the front line, and you'll get a feel for how fast the numbers mean units are as you play more of the game. Got to set up a quick example. Okay. And then Torx go there. I don't give a fuck about you. Another thing that's important to note, start the battle and hit pause, is you can see the cannons that I gave the dwarves. Range indicators. If they were to turn, their range would be about here. So if I move up my forces, I'm going to want to move around that. Usually, you want to advance as much as the map allows outside of the range of the enemy artillery. Don't worry about, like, oh man, if I'm all the way over here by this wall where that is, I won't be able to get to the front line in time. You'll get there with plenty of time. Any of your flanking tools are going to be fast enough that they can just sprint up to the enemy line faster than you would think. So just, it's more and more important to stay outside of the enemy's range and not take the damage for free on your targets. Couple hotkeys that will help you if you want to advance all at the same time. Select everything you want to advance. Hold down Alt, left click, drag, and you can tell all of your units to advance in formation. This is almost always how I would advance, because when you do that, what you want to do is put your enemy under pressure when you're rushing. Everything's about pressure, pressure, pressure. So you move all your units at once, run at them, and then while they're running, give them their commands. But don't give them their commands while they're all stopped, or your line will be like, well, the right side is advancing faster than the left side because you started with the right side, right? So you want to give all your orders at the same time. You guys run up and around here. It's another thing you can do is if you hold shift, then you right click and drag, you can give your people a rough attack path, and you can even loop it to attack something, and they will run around behind it before looping in. It's a useful little tool. I still prefer to manually micro most things. One last little micro trick I'll tell you is if the enemy cannons are shooting at your lord, an easy way to keep dodging without keeping your lord constantly under stress is to do that. You held that shift key like we did for these guys. Shift key, right click and drag. But if you just do a spiral, your lord will start running around in circles. And the AI cannons don't just cheat and know that you told him to do that. They'll still shoot at him as if he's running in a straight line. Can be a nice way to dodge stuff. I saw that with Ice Power, so I'll give him the credit. Last thing I want to say about rushing is this. It's about units. So You just get out of my way. I don't need you for this. How to avoid blobbing up. I see this all the time with newer players, and it is that you'll end up with a big blob of infantry on the front line, like this. So if infantry try to path through infantry, it's just not going to work. You say they get caught on each other, then they end up here. And in the end, if you had 10 infantry attacking, you're still going to have 10 infantry attacking. Just now, like, 3 of them are Bestigors, but it's not like you have 20 infantry attacking because there's 2 infantry units here. The front line was already saturated with infantry. Nothing's happening there. If you want to advance infantry with infantry, you have to break it up like this. You can see 2 of my units are here, and the Bestigors are going to come up through a gap. So I'll give them that order. They won't get stuck on the front line. It'll be fine. Now, a way you can attack through your own infantry is if you're of a different size than them. Infantry-sized units get this small icon, while Minotaurs get this large icon. Wait, shit. There it is, large icon. You can see they are going to plow straight through my infantry, and all of a sudden the front line is doubly saturated with infantry and large units. This is true of cavalry, this is true of single entity monsters, this is true of monsters cavalry, this is true of everything. You can have multiple units of multiple different sizes charge through each other. Giant single entities like Hell Pit Abominations or Dragons can get through infantry. They can get through monsters infantry of your own team. That sort of thing. But if you pile up multiple monsters infantry on top of each other, they're going to get in each other's way. Ogres. Ogres have a massive problem with this. But infantry block infantry, monster infantry block monsters infantry. So try not to give both Minotaurs like the order to attack the same thing, or they'll just end up in each other's way. Alright. Yeah. Monsters infantry should charge through your own infantry, because your own infantry will block for them, and they can push onto the back line and get their shit done. If you have just infantry, remember to checkerboard stagger them so they can walk between the gaps in each other. Never end up with infantry on top of infantry, where they both just get stuck. Alright. I hope that helped a little bit with rushing. It didn't cover everything, this is just a short guide. To cover everything, we would have to go literally faction by faction, describe every unit, every time there was a patch, what units are good and what units are bad. So I just gave you some general principles of rushing that apply to every single faction that wants to rush, and you will have to learn the rest as you play. Alright. Take care. Roar!
Subscribe, yes, yes.